Some people build an IT business, others shape an entire industry. Amy Babinchak is one of those people. From her early days as a network administrator to becoming a Microsoft MVP, leading multiple IT businesses, and being part of the founding of an organization that represents IT service providers nationwide, her impact on the industry is undeniable. Today, we're going to dive into Amy's incredible journey, how she built her business, the lessons she learned, and what's next for the IT world. So let's get started. Amy, welcome to the show. Before we jump into your impressive career, let's start with something fun. If you could go back and give 10-year-old Amy one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I'm one of those rare people that just loves my life. And people do occasionally ask that. And I'm like, gosh, I have loved everything about my life. And there isn't a single thing that I would change about it. So, my advice to my 10-year-old self is just keep doing what you're doing and have fun with life and let it take you where it goes.
Would 10-year-old you be surprised with where you are today?
Probably. I don't think I had any sense of where I was going. I was just following the opportunities that presented themselves that I thought were fun and interesting.
Hmm. That's great. And it can take you on a wild path. And that brings us to your first position, your first IT job that was at Hospice of Michigan. What first got you into technology and what led you into that position?
I was always in technology. I was a very different person in high school. I would say that my life revolved around music and photography and anything else my counselors could squeeze in around that. I was like, fine, I'll show up to class, but I was not interested. I was not, there's this huge push for STEM right now. And I'm like, oh my God, that would have totally pushed me out of the industry because I had no interest in that whatsoever.
Mm.
And what actually ended up happening was I hated all that STEM stuff so bad that they said, well, you could take computer class and it would count as math credit because they really wanted to get me into college and you had to have so many math credits, right?
Mm.
And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I fell in love with that computer. It was all programming then and stuff. And I just thought it was so cool that you could make something.
What did you make?
One of the things I remember making was a little program that floated a sailboat around the screen. I made Dungeon and Dragons style games, stuff that was in my wheelhouse of interest, right? I just little games and stuff, but it was so fascinating to me that you could give this thing commands and make it do what you wanted to do. That was my first interest. And then I ended up starting university in computer science, but then quickly ditched it because it was all math and programming. And what I really wanted to make it do stuff for was so that I could help people. And
Mm.
that's the thing that's driven my career is just how can I be helpful?
Hmm. What was the moment when you decided, I don't just want a job in IT, I want to run my own IT business, I want to help more people?
I started my IT business because I was severely burned out. I started off my career not in IT, but I ended up being the IT person all the time in my non-IT career for a few years. I worked in local governments and nonprofit organizations, and I was hired to do other stuff. I was in environmental work, but I built databases and created processes and wrote menus and did all these things so that they could use their computer better and we could be more successful at what we were doing. And then I got tired of chasing grants all the time. And then I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this computer thing because I'm tired of chasing grants. And so I got my Novell certification and applied for a job, and Hospice in Michigan hired me. And I worked there for a few years. And then I moved over to a systems engineer job with a national firm. And they had me, I thought, oh, this is good. I'll just be covering half of the state of Michigan, which is what I was
Mm.
doing for hospice in Michigan. I was supporting 26 sites and also part of their headquarters. And I started doing that half of the state. And at that time, what we were doing was installing WANs for schools, right? So taking none of the schools, they were not connected to each other, right? School districts had computers, but they had no network across the district. So I would go in and install these big WAN environments, program routers, and do all the heavy tech lifting. And once I mastered my half of Michigan, they were like, oh, yeah, we let the guy go on the west half of Michigan. So now you're going to do the whole state. Oh, we let the guy go in Minnesota. So we're going to have you do Minnesota as well. So my job just kept getting bigger and bigger. But still, I was able to get my arms around it and manage all these projects and get everything under control. And they said, there's a guy in Oklahoma and the project is going really poorly. Could you go over there and help them finish it? And I was like,
Mm.
sure. So I get in the plane, I go to Oklahoma. That goes well. The next week, there's a guy in St. Louis, same people with my same job, right? Who's the customer is so angry they won't even speak to him anymore. Can you go down
Oh,
there and see if you can fix it and get that project done? Because we're about to lose this huge deal, right? So I fly down to St. Louis and I patch it up and I do it. And then I started flying to every state. And I was away from home 3 weeks out of the month, just flying from place to place, solving failed projects and helping the other system engineers actually be able to complete stuff for customers.
wow.
And
That's an
that was,
example of you loving to help people, but at what cost?
oh my God, it was awful.
Mm.
I was so burned out and it would cause me to get really angry. And I would say to my boss, don't call me, leave me alone. Don't call me. Right. I will still be over here in Michigan doing my own thing. I would just be angry, go away. And he would leave me alone for a couple weeks, and then he'd come back around and be like, "I have this really big problem in Arizona." And I'm like, "Fine." So I'll go to Arizona, back and forth. And finally one day I was like, "You know what? I quit." And I just bailed. I was so burned out, nothing could have made me stay. And I had built up a little group of clients on the side, and I realized that they were paying me as much as my boss was paying me. And so I went to all of them and I said, look, I'm going to quit my job. Yeah, but I need to know that I can have a steady income. So will you sign this contract saying that you're going to pay me every month? Which they were paying me every month anyway. They were just a hobby thing, right? They were just
Right.
over there on the side because I never say no to any opportunity. And so I would be in a school working and they would say, oh, my brother has this business and he can't find anybody to help him. And they have this problem. Do you think you could do that? And I would go over there. I'm like, sure, I can go over there on Saturday morning if he meets me over there and I'll take care of it. And that's how I ended up with my first group of clients because I went to all of them. There was like six. And I said, I'm going to quit my job. I need you to sign this contract. And they all said, okay, we want you to be in business.
It's amazing. And this is a thing that keeps coming up, a theme that keeps coming up is someone starting their MSP because of burnout. And I'm sure that's something as you built your business that you were mindful of is making sure that you're taking care of your employees and not burning them out because there's a lot of MSPs out there that came from both burnout and then having this side group of customers that they were helping and taking really good care of that allowed them to have a business. And I think that's fantastic. A great way to get over burnout that I haven't heard before.
It was so much less work than what I had been doing. So for me, it was like being on vacation. It was just
Mm.
like my travel just stopped down to zero. And that was the thing that was burning me out. It wasn't the work.
Mm.
It was the being away from home
Yeah.
that much time. And that just it wasn't for me. Some people are road warriors and I am not. It was very stressful for me. But it was also probably the best experience I could have had at what it was going to be like to be in business because I was by myself all the time. The
Mm.
company was in California. My boss was in Indiana. I was on my own.
Right.
And so not only that, but I was continually dropped into angry customers. And everywhere I went, the customer was upset with the company. They didn't like what was going on. They didn't trust had been lost. I got dropped in to fix the whole thing. And I would meet with the superintendent and I would meet with the school boards. And then I would go meet with the IT staff. And the first thing they did was sit me down and quiz me to see if a woman could actually be qualified to do the job.
Oh, brother.
And then I would start and fix it. And invariably they would say, okay, the only person we ever want to work on our system is Amy.
Yes.
And my boss was understandably very distressed when I just up and quit one day. But I had reached my very last straw.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was mindful of that as an employer. There was two things that got me to quit my jobs, which I always did quit. I was a terrible employee. Boredom
Mhm.
and burnout.
I would say that is also a management problem, a leadership problem. So I don't think you're a terrible employee. Somebody should have been on the pulse of that long before you were driven to quit.
I would get bored really easily. And until I got that job that was so overwhelming, it burned me out. So I guess I probably quietly sought those jobs that had more and more responsibility because I would get easily bored. Once I mastered something, I was like, time to move on. I've done everything I can do here and I've learned everything I need to learn. It's time to move. And so I was moving around every year and a half to 3 years was my longest time I was anywhere. About a
Mm.
year and a half was average.
Yeah. Starting your own MSP, that wasn't boring.
I didn't get bored. My wife was terrified because she just figured I would get bored of that and I would just quit that someday, right?
Mm.
And she felt that was more of a risk. But to me, I was like, I'm never going to get bored now because I can always just get a new customer and they'll have new things to do. And it was my job. I just was able to continually change my job enough that I was never bored.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. And a lot of entrepreneurs do feel that they have that history of year and a half jobs to 3 years because they're just not finding where they fit. And it really is more creating and creating how much challenge you want, being able to have that control. So it sounds like you're right in the right place. So building a business obviously is never easy, especially in IT. So what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in growing Harbor Computer Services?
Probably, I think the biggest challenge, and I think this is probably for any MSP, is hiring that first person. Because I started from burnout, I wasn't really sure that I was starting a business. I was just hanging out with these 6 companies for a while. And then I thought, okay, I do this. And so I am going to turn this into a business. And for me, that meant hiring somebody. And it took just about all my income to do that. That first step is a doozy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go the route of hiring somebody part time or hiring somebody who was less skilled. I really wanted someone who I thought could be my co equal
Mm,
because I really didn't want to be a manager. I was just certain I would be a terrible manager. And so the one thing, and I always held true to this for my whole business, is I don't want to manage people.
okay.
I want people that are motivated and can manage themselves.
Wow.
So I wanted people like me. So I went out and hired people like me.
Wow. So who was that first person? And did it
Uh,
go as planned?
It did. That first person stayed with the company the entire time until I sold it last year. So
Wow.
23 years. And he was working for one of my clients. I
Okay.
had grown a number of clients over that time, and I found him in the CAD department of one of my clients, and he had just gone out and got his MCSE certification, even though he was a CAD guy, because he found his interest in the computers more than the CAD work. And he started calling me every day, like asking me questions about their network, about the backups. He really wanted to take that over. And then when I was ready, I went to my client and said, hey, how about I hire Ted from you? I don't think he wants to be a CAD guy. And they said, we don't think he wants to be a CAD guy either. And that's what we hired him to be. And he's really gone off and created his own thing. So they said, yeah, go ahead. and make him an offer. So I did.
That's
So I,
fantastic.
so I hired him from a customer.
And but being so upfront about it and with everyone knowing it's the right decision for everyone, which is a great outcome.
I didn't give him any hints. I didn't want to risk my client. I didn't want to lose their respect at all. So I went to them
Mm,
first and said, hey, if you say no, I won't say anything to him
right,
ever. But I think this
right.
would be a good move for his career. And it was.
And from what you're describing, it seems like a great fit. And it's so hard. I think when you're starting a business, we always hire and we advise other MSPs to hire around values. But when you're starting out and it's those first hires and they're so critically important, it's hard to know what you're looking for. It's hard to know who's going to fit, who's going to be really in this with you. So it's great that you found that person first go around.
Yeah, my next several employees came from the user groups that I participated in locally. So
That's
again, I was meeting people that were working in the industry, and I would get to know them after a while and then invite them to come work for me.
That's a great strategy. And a lot of MSPs will stay siloed, and it's so important to be involved in groups out there and connecting with others because it's not your competition directly. So staying connected and staying with your ears open at all times and making connections, even for introverts, because that was always something that was scary for me was going out there and making connections. But that really is what has built our business is not operating in a silo. So that's
Yeah.
great advice, Amy.
Yeah, everybody in IT is an introvert. That's a large generalization. It fits the 80-20 rule, I think.
Yeah.
And so when you go to these events, everybody there, or most everybody there is an introvert and
Mm.
they're feeling the same things that you're feeling. But we're all there because we love the industry, we love the technology, and we love eating pizza.
Yes.
There was always pizza at these things, and you
Mhm.
can always make friends over a slice of pizza.
That's great. I should put that on a t-shirt. I love What's the hardest business lesson you've learned over the years?
The hardest lesson I learned was that people will lie to you and not pay their bill. It had never occurred to me that somebody would absolutely lie to you straight to your face, or that you would do some work and invoice somebody and they would decide not to pay you and have the
Mm.
million excuses. And probably they're not paying a lot of things in their life. It was just, I met some people that was like their mode of operation was to avoid paying everybody, not just me, but it's just how they operated their life. And I just thought that was bizarre. It had never even occurred to me that this is something that people do. It was so foreign to me. So in a couple of cases, I let more debt build up than I should have before I got rid of those
Mhm.
people because it just was such a foreign concept to me that I didn't even understand what the implications were for me. You know?
Yeah, that is good advice because as much as people say business isn't personal, it does feel personal and you're making a connection with somebody. And you
Yeah,
certainly don't want to have to say, I don't think you're ever going to pay me. Thus, I am not going to allow you to have the commission. That's pretty harsh. They're a customer. So I understand that's a tough balance, but you have bills to pay as well.
I
It's
know.
not a charity.
Yeah, that was the hardest lesson for me. I think I'm probably not alone in this, but I just always assume that people are like me. I think we probably all assume that, right? We go into the world thinking that our way of doing things and our way of seeing the world is how other people see the world. Why would they? It all makes
Right.
sense to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm one of those people that if I have a bill that's 7 days late, I start to sweat. So I'm like, oh no, they waited a week and I forgot.
You have to get rid of those bad clients, and that was hard. It was really hard. Once I started doing it, it became easier, but it was really hard
Mhm.
to make the first few steps. If you step out of yourself, you can see the difference between a good client and a bad client. But when you're
Right.
inside of it, it's really hard to see. There's still not stuff that needs to be done. There's still important work to do there. This is going to get better, right? Because we're doing so much good work. But that doesn't matter to some people.
That's true. And when you have that one bad client that starts to get into your psyche, And when you're selling to other clients, you're not respecting yourself. So getting rid of those actually allows you to hold yourself to a higher caliber and say, I am worth more. And then you are going to get that client. You're looking for that right client. And then you're all happy because you are overworking your staff to make a customer that probably isn't going to pay on time happy. When you actually have clients who will appreciate it,
The bad client isn't always the one who doesn't pay. So I
well,
should
yeah.
mention that too. So sometimes it's
Mhm.
the one that causes you too much stress or isn't a great fit. So a couple of times through the course of my business, I fired clients twice. I fired my largest client,
Wow.
and it was because it was too stressful, right?
Yeah.
They became too demanding over the other clients. They just became an outsized force in the company. And I think everyone was scared except for me because I was like, no, this huge client is holding us down. They're a weight, right? So when we got rid of that big client, all the other ones lifted up and everyone was happier for it. Because my employees were stressed out. They were always concerned about this big client that we have to make happy. And I was like, we don't have to make them any more happy. We can't ignore our other clients while we're making this giant client happy. And then I just had to get rid of them.
Yeah. It's great advice. It's great advice. And how did you frame that conversation?
In both cases, they were angry at me. And that's probably another lesson is even those clients that aren't paying and aren't treating you right, they're going to be angry too. They were also angry. They were like, but I'm your best customer. I was like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
But what the other ones that were large, I just told them, hey, we're not a good fit for you guys anymore, right? You are so significantly different than the rest of our clients that I don't feel like we're a good fit for you anymore. And I don't think we're going to be able to do a good job for you going forward.
Mm.
And I didn't really believe that was true. I thought that we could continue doing a good job that we were doing. It was just taking too much out of us to do that. But then that let them say, oh, they don't think they can do a good job for us anymore. I got to go find somebody else.
Mm.
And they did.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. It would be a hard one to do, especially because so many MSPs like yourself are helpers and you want to be able to do everything that they want. But what a great decision for your team and for your business to do that.
Yeah, this reminds me that one of the things
Mm.
I had to do in my business to be successful was to get rid of my ego. We want to be helpers. We want to fix things. We want to make it better. And when I was a part of that bad client, you're afraid to get rid of them because the next firm going in there is going to see the mess. And the mess was there because we could never make forward progress with that customer. We would butt heads sometimes.
Mm.
They didn't want us to do this, but we knew this had to be done. That the problem was never going to go away unless we solved this thing. And we would just be butting heads on it. And finally, I'd be like, okay, this is not a fit. We're not working. We're not working together well at all.
Mm.
And they knew it and I knew it. But I kept some of those clients around for way too long because I did not want the next firm coming in and seeing that mess. And then finally, my ego went, yeah, but that's not your mess. It's not your fault that mess is there. And every client that you've ever picked up has been a giant mess. And you never said to yourself, this previous firm really sucked. Like, I never did that. I never blamed the previous firm. So finally, I just said to myself, ditch it. Nobody's going to blame you.
No, that's a great work with it for sure. So the next section is a lightning round, and it's just some quick little questions and answers that are they're pretty fun. So what's one piece of IT advice you wish everyone would stop following?
From an IT professional perspective, I think everyone needs to stop waiting for some future point where this thing is going to become more stable and then they're going to start using it.
Mm.
No, just jump in and start using it now. I'm a big fan of when the new things come out, the new thing is bigger, better, faster, more secure than the old thing, and we should start using it today.
Mm, that's great. What's a tech tool you couldn't live without?
I'm a weird IT person in that I am not a gadget person at all. I do not like IT for the tools and the toys or even the tech. I am totally in IT for what I can do for people and businesses to enable them to be better. I don't care what the tech is or what the toy is. So I do everything on my phone as much as I possibly can. So for me, the cell phone is my computer today. It's my pocket computer that I take with me everywhere.
Yeah, I lost mine a couple times, and boy, surprising the impact it has on you when you're searching furiously for that thing. And yeah, you can't get into anything without it. Yeah. So every business owner has that moment when things click. What was the first major breakthrough that made you realize that Harbor Computer Services was going to be a lasting success?
It was the big 2008 recession.
Hmm.
So in that time, I grew very concerned as everyone did. So for people that were not in business at that time, what happened is that the financial industry came to a grinding halt. No loans were being made to businesses. In my area here in Michigan, we're big manufacturing, engineering, prototyping business. So at least 60%, sometimes more, of my client base was in that industry. They're engineering, architecture, prototyping, small manufacturing. And their businesses came to an absolute halt because
Mm.
all of those businesses depend on loans. So I always say manufacturing is like farming. Farmers have a field, they take out a loan so that they can cover all of their expenses for seed and feed and labor and all of that until the end product grows and they sell it, they pay off the loan, they take their profits. Manufacturing works exactly the same way. They take out a loan, they get a contract. The contract is to make something. They take out a loan for the materials, for the engineering, for the everything processed till the end when they sell it and they make all their money. If you can't get the loan, you don't have a business. And that's what happened in that great 2008 recession. The financial industry just crashed and stopped making loans. Many of my clients were just at a standstill. And what happened in 2008 is that we did not lose a single client. They laid off people. All my clients shrunk by at least 20% in staff members, but they never fired us. So that was confirmation that all the things that we thought we were doing right were proven that we were doing them right. They valued us more than they valued some of their own employees.
Amazing. Those are amazing partnerships that you've built. And that's so important for MSPs to work on it as a partnership, not as a transaction. And that's real proof that you did that.
My goal was never to be a contractor. My goal
Mm.
was to be part of their business. We made a lot of effort to become their IT department, right?
Mm.
So when there was birthday parties, we were there. When there was employee picnics, we were there. When I told my staff, go, they'll be like, it's so-and-so's birthday tomorrow at this, and they're having a big party, and they would think they shouldn't go. I'm like, show up.
Yes.
And I'm like, anytime you hear that they're having an event, you show up because we want them to see you as one of their staff. And they did.
Yeah. It's wonderful. Amy, you've built and led multiple companies. You've helped countless IT pros through third tier, and you've been at the forefront of the industry. You were also one of the founders of the National Society of IT Service Providers, where we worked on that together. So tell me a little bit about the early days of the NSITSP and the importance of that organization to the industry.
I think everything I do just seems to grow from a thing I did before.
Mhm.
Right. So you mentioned third tier. When I became a Microsoft MVP, other IT firms started calling me and asking for my help with technical issues. And another MVP and I, that I was friends with, we started that company together. And then he unfortunately died. He got cancer and died on me. That was rather traumatic, but I
Yeah.
decided to keep that business going because it fit right into my reason for being, which was now I wasn't helping just businesses in my local area. I'm helping other IT businesses around the world, wherever they came from. And then NSITSP, we started to have conversations. Those three of us, it was three people in the industry, probably many people know, it was Dave Sobel, Carl Palachuk, and myself. And we had these conversations. I think the first time it was maybe in Australia, we were at a conference together and sitting around saying something needs to be done because the world was starting to talk about the IT industry and not in a good way,
Mm.
right? The MSPs were hurting their businesses. Their people were not acting professional. We need to do something about this industry. Nobody knows who they are. It was just a lot of uncertainty. You started to read a bunch of this in the news. And then Louisiana put together a registration program for firms because that was a fallout of a big ransomware attack. And they didn't know where to point the fingers. They said, these people are supposed to be in charge, but we don't know who these people are. And so they wanted at least them to start registering as being an industry, basically. Put them all together and say, I'm part of this industry. I'm registered with the state as being part of this industry. And that was the major impetus. All of us in this industry have run across time and time again these people that we referred to as trunk slammers and man in the van. And those terms didn't show up. They're very disparaging terms, but they didn't show up for no reason. They showed up because they had a lot of truth in them. I had a client, was a large 200-person real estate firm, and they had a literal trunk slammer who went by the name of Uncle Ron. And this guy would show up in his car, which was packed full of printers because every realtor in this place had their own printer because they're real estate, they're all independent contractors, right? So they all had their
Mm.
own little office with their own printer. He would show up with a car full of used printers and go in, and anybody who was having trouble with their printer, if they bought a brand new printer, this is what killed me. This woman bought a brand new printer, plugged it in. She couldn't figure out how to get it set up. And I was there doing some other work on the servers. I'm like, do you want me to set up your printer for you? Stupid, simple job, right?
Mm.
I can take 5 minutes and set up your printer for you. But oh, Uncle Ron's coming. I'm like, okay. So I saw what he did. He literally set her printer up and went, oh, this printer. Well, something's really wrong with this printer. It's not working right. He took it off her desk, went to his car, swapped it out with one of his used printers, and
No.
put that on her desk. That's why we have this really disparaging
Oh,
phrase. This guy was duping people. And
yes.
we need to have a way in our industry to distinguish ourselves from people like that because they do exist. And it's really nothing new to have a national organization that in some way gives the customer a feeling that they know who's qualified and who isn't. My
Mm.
big thing is that the customers do not know how to hire an IT firm. And I know you've had that experience yourself.
Absolutely.
They don't know how to hire an IT firm. They cannot tell
Mm.
by looking at us who's qualified and who isn't. And we have some industry standards, but they don't mean anything to the customer. But I've said this time and time again, I don't really know who's a good accountant and who's not, but I know who's a CPA, who's a bookkeeper, and who doesn't have any accreditations by a standardizing board of any sort. That gives me some comfort in knowing at least I know what to expect from this person and I know where they land in the overall career path that's there. And we haven't had that for our industry and we need it. And
Yeah.
so that's been a big thing for me is opening the black box and letting customers be able to make better decisions on when they're hiring IT firms.
Yeah. And that's great. It's a great work that the NSITSP is doing. And any MSPs that are not yet members should go to nsitsp.org and sign up and be part of this. Great to just be a member, but also get involved in what the NSITSP is doing for professionalizing the industry. So, Amy, looking back, what are you most proud of in your career?
If I really look back and think about it, I think I'm most proud of the people that I hired. I'm really most proud of what they've become, what they're doing. I'm very proud that I was able to help people. It helps that was recognized in 2010. We became the smallest firm ever to be recognized by Microsoft as Partner of the Year. I had
Wow.
4 people at that time. So we were very small. And it was just little recognitions along the way. But for me, really seeing what happened with my clients, when we did a good job, I could see their business grow.
Mm.
And I knew that we were part of that. And sometimes it would be very dramatic and sometimes it would be slow over time, but you could really see the impact that we had for those customers. And then being a Microsoft MVP has been a really amazing experience. Winning that award, having that confirmation in 2008 that we really were doing the thing that we thought we were doing for our clients, retaining those original 6 clients from the day I said, will you sign this contract, to the day I told them I've sold the business.
Wow.
That was a pretty good feeling. They were all super happy for me. Over the years, I had so much support from my clients for growing my business. I used them as my advisors for what should I do? I don't know how to grow a business. I don't know any of this stuff. But I knew that some of them did. Some of their businesses had been in business for 50 years. And I would go in and I would plop down in the office of the head of the company and say, how do you do this? How do you do that?
Mm.
What do I need to do? What do I need to do next? I have this problem. How should I address it? I didn't have any problem asking them for advice either. And they were happy to give it. I found that small businesses like to support small businesses and they like to see other people being successful in business too.
And that's some great advice of just being okay not knowing everything and asking other people and learning from other people around you. I think sometimes people confuse success with knowing all the answers, and that isn't it at all. It's always being open to learning, no matter what stage of the business you're in, is always being open to hear other advice and just continually learn.
Yep.
Yeah.
I never stop learning. I get bored if I stop learning. So I
Yeah.
just, I have to learn. Learning business was not in my plan, but I think my educational background helped with that as far as being in a community and wanting to contribute. You look for these sort of through lines. I trace that back to my dad. He was always very strongly involved. He was a union iron worker. He was
Hmm.
very involved with the union and going to events. And then he was really involved in environmental issues and basically contributing to the community in which he lived. If you want your industry to be better, you need to contribute to your industry. If you want your environment that you live in to be better, then you need to work to contribute to that. If you're not actively part of it, then you're missing out. You're not doing the whole job. You're only doing part of the job.
So don't sit on the sidelines.
Don't sit on the sidelines. Get involved.
Um, Thank you, Amy. That's great advice. And that's a wrap on today's episode of the MSP Growth Podcast. If Amy's story resonated with you, let us know by hitting subscribe, leave a review, connect with us online. So until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and remember, every challenge is just another chapter in your success story. See you next week.